welcome to the University of Derby, Cressida.
Thank you.
And to begin with, I'd like to ask, how did you get into fashion recruitment? And is this linked to any independent interest in the fashion industry and fashion culture?
Okay. It was a happy accident getting into fashion recruitment. So I didn't even know that fashion recruitment was a thing before I got into it. I came out of uni and got into PR, got a job in PR, which again was another complete accident because I did jewellery design at university, so it's completely unrelated. But it was the recession. So the company that I was working for, the PR company that I was working for, went bust, and she had a friend who happened to run a recruitment agency. Right. So that's how I got into recruitment. So I started working there, and it was one of the kind of big, well-known specialists that I started working for, and it was just luck. It was pure luck. I loved it, absolutely loved it. It was a perfect sort of combination of interest in business and kind of appealed to my more kind of organisational side, I suppose, but also, you know, really loving the fashion side, and I have always been interested in fashion.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though I did jewellery at uni, I've always been much more interested in the fashion side of jewellery rather than the banging bits of silver.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was kind of a good, happy accident. I don't think anybody ever sets out to be in recruitment. I haven't met a single person who's set out to have a career in recruitment. Most people just find it by accident. That's exactly what happened with me. Okay,
thank you for that. So moving on, with the advent of online social networking services like LinkedIn,
yes,
the world of recruitment has changed.
Yeah.
I think you'd agree.
Yes.
In your opinion, has this enhanced established recruitment practice or weakened it?
I think I took a lot of thought this because I think it's a useful tool, LinkedIn. If we look at LinkedIn in particular, I think it's a useful tool, but actually I think it's probably weakened it. Just because I think that the filter has been lost. And actually it's interesting talking to your students because I was talking exactly about that. About the fact that now you no longer have that, the curation that you had with a specialist recruiter. So I know a lot of companies have taken their recruitment in-house. A lot of the big companies have taken it in-house and use LinkedIn to, you know, as a sort of a database, I suppose, to try and find their people. But then, you know, what they're dealing with is thousands of CVs that, you know, and thousands of people that really know nothing about. So I think that the filter is really the main thing that has gone when it comes to people stopping using recruitment companies in favour of using LinkedIn.
Right.
And I think having that one point of contact on both sides for the designer and for the client, and somebody who knows both of those people and knows what one likes and knows what the other one likes, you know, and then puts the two together, is actually a real positive. So I think that's, I would say that that's the main reason it's been weakened, not sort of enhanced.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Some interesting points there. So the notion of trust within relationships is kind of been maybe undermined or thinning somehow.
I think so. Yeah. I think, you know, that. I mean, I'm a real believer in the human contact, you know, and the kind of the personal contact aspect. And I think with, it was interesting, one of your students said she just didn't like the idea of that. She didn't know how to present herself on LinkedIn. Yeah, she was really worried about that, you know, the fact that nobody was there giving her advice and that what she might put down would be wrong or she might and you know, that's, you know, so that's part of the reason. I suppose a good recruiter is there to help you find that job. You know, they can tell you what to do, what not to do when you're put in front of somebody. And equally with a client, you know, if you're looking at 100 CVs, somebody might look great on paper, but they might not necessarily be the right personality for your team, or you know, you're privy to that information that the company won't have if they're just using this sort of, you know, this online system.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm slightly biased, but I would say that, I think there's a lot to be said for just having that one point of contact.
Okay. So I'm interested to learn what aspects of fashion recruitment were the most challenging for you and your company, and what aspects were the most rewarding?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few challenges. I think one of the key challenges was dealing with what we call the HR wall. So within each company, you would normally have a team of HR people, and often they would be the first point of contact for us and for designers. You know, if designers were applying direct, then they'd see HR rather than see the head of design.
Right.
It's the same as a recruiter. We would deal with HR rather than deal with the heads of design often in big companies. And this was a challenge, I think, because very often HR slightly resented using a recruiter.
Right. I can see that.
It was, it's money for a start, so it's, it comes out of their budget. But also, I think a lot of them thought that, they should be able to do that job perfectly well themselves. So there was always that slight kind of friction. And it was really by the wall. What I mean is trying to get the CVs past that person to the person that really mattered. So trying to get it through to the head of design was often a challenge, because the HR people often thought that they knew better.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's a well-known thing. I think if you talk to anybody in recruitment, they would say the same, particularly with design, I think it's a very particular thing to kind of the creative industries rather than, buyers or technical.
So, excuse my ignorance, but would you receive a brief from the brand or the company?
Yes.
And then would that brief come from the HR department, or?
It would probably be written by the head of, but it might be, tailored by, it might be sort of overseen by HR, or it might just come straight from HR. It depends how big the department was, depends on the resource. But there could be, some companies use generic briefs. So they might have just a brief for a designer position or a head of design position that we would get. And some companies, it would come from the creative. So it was quite varied. But yeah, I'd say it's probably a kind of combination of the two.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So in all cases, there was probably a conversation between the creatives and HR before the brief came out to yourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
All right. And then it would depend on the culture of the company as to whether you'd be allowed to go straight to the creatives or not.
It was rare for us to be able to deal with the creatives.
Right.
And I do understand that. I think creatives are there to be creative. They're not there to deal with recruitment agencies. But I think, we'll go on to talk about this, I think, a bit later, but the issue is HR departments not really having any understanding of design.
Right.
So, they're not creative people, and they're not trained to know how to look at a portfolio or really understand the design process. So I'd say that's one of the key challenges, really.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then the most rewarding, always was finding somebody there for an amazing job. Yeah. And equally finding a client, an amazing designer, that was just brilliant. And raising expectations, I think, was another great thing. So, finding somebody, a designer that maybe they wouldn't think that they could get. So if you're dealing with a high street company, finding them somebody who was, a little bit more aspirational, or who came from the high end. Yeah. Which is just, that's just fantastic. There's no feeling like that.
Right, great, thank you. Okay, so my next question, findings from recent research suggest that fashion companies have not prioritised recruitment of creative talent in-house.
Yes.
At least. Claiming that human resources departments are not efficient in finding good matches for their creative studios. Do you think that this stems from a reliance on specialist recruitment agencies?
This is a really interesting question. I just a bit chicken and egg this, because I don't know whether it comes from relying on specialist recruiters, or kind of or because they don't in HR departments aren't invested in. But I think it's probably more that companies. I think it's kind of age old, this really, that companies don't invest in design. So they don't see it as being important enough in the business to warrant having somebody who's a specialist. when actually, I think there are some big companies that are waking up to that now and will have people brought in just to deal with the design department.
Right.
But very often what you'll have is you'll have generalists, so you'll have people in HR who might come from frozen peas, but who are expected to know about everything. Right. So, they're the filter. And that is tough.
Yeah.
When, really, of course, they need somebody in there who really knows about design and just looks after that area. So I think that's probably the reason that there's an issue there, is that the HR departments just haven't been invested in that way. The savvy companies now are bringing people in just to specialise in those areas, but there still aren't that many of them actually. It is interesting. So I think they've had to use specialist recruiters because they haven't had specialists in-house.
Right.
So, I'm not quite sure which one leads to which, really.
Yeah. And have you noticed any difference in the global recruitment market? Have you seen any good examples of fashion companies taking care of the business of recruitment in-house?
Absolutely.
All right.
I have, yeah.
Can you mention?
It's probably more bad, but we won't mention those.
Right, okay.
Burberry is a good example, actually.
Right.
Burberry is a good example. They do have people in there who really understand and nurture the design area. So they might deal with other areas, but that design is a focus, and they will have people who, in particular, look after that area. And very often they will have come from design recruitment backgrounds, so they might not have been they might not be designers, but they will have come from specialist recruiters, and they will really understand how that process works. So I'd hold them up as being a company where it does work, but they also use agencies. So they do their own in-house recruitment, but they also pull in specialist agencies for hard to fill positions. Yeah. But there are many more. Sadly, there are many more examples where it isn't working still, but I'm hoping that people will wake up to that as time goes on. Okay.
So given that small companies will have difficulty committing to substantial financial investment into human resources, do you think there is room for agencies to work more closely with companies to support their needs successfully and prepare candidates as well more effectively?
I do, I do. And again, this is a really interesting question because it chimes with probably the biggest change in the industry, which is that for contingency agencies like mine, it's mostly now luxury brands and SMEs, so small to medium enterprises that use recruitment agencies, because a lot of the big companies have taken their recruitment in-house. It's changed, that sort of the client base has changed. So where they're under-resourced, a lot of the smaller companies, like you mentioned, they haven't got the big HR departments. They are having to draft in specialist help. They haven't got the resources themselves, so they do use specialist recruiters. And actually it works really well. And I'd say, that was a real pleasure actually to deal with a lot of those companies, because you could really get to know them well. They weren't the big kind of faceless corporates. You could really kind of get under the skin of the brand and work very closely with them. So I think more recruitment agencies should go that little bit further, I think, to really kind of get to know the company. And some of the companies that we work with, we would actually sit in on interviews with them. So that's kind of that's the extent to which they would go to get the right people. And that's great, to be able to get to know a brand that well and to really feel a part of forming the team is fantastic.
Just for the benefit of anyone watching this who doesn't know what a contingency agency is, could you just explain what that process is?
A contingency agency is basically, it's an agency that doesn't get an upfront fee. So you only get paid when you make the placement. So you will arrange the interviews, send the CVs, and you only get your fee when the placement is confirmed. The difference is, other agencies will charge an upfront fee. So they might charge, it'll be three-pronged, and they might charge a fee at the beginning of the process.
Right.
When they send the CVs, they might charge a fee when the interviews happen, and then they'll charge another fee when the placement actually happens.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that.
That's all right.
Okay. Right. So, reflecting on my career in industry,
Yes.
so squeeze myself in there. I think there's room for more intimate relationships to be defined between recruiter and candidate. Though I've just heard you talk about accompanying a candidate to an interview, and I have actually been in that position, and it is one that is very supportive, and you do feel a bit more, well, you just feel that the extra support helps you with your confidence, if nothing else. For example, the recruitment for coaching support is commonplace at executive level.
Yes.
But this is not recognised as necessary at the lower echelons of professional development. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that there's any mileage in providing something that's more intensive with regards to how you your relationships with the candidates? Or?
Yeah. This is a tough one because personally, yes, I feel, yes, I think there is room for that. But if I've got my business head on,
right, okay,
then that is a tough one. I think that the reason that the support is provided more at executive level is because, from a very kind of crude point of view, there's more money to be made at that level. There are probably, there's less turnover. If you've got an executive search agency, they won't be handling as many positions at one time.
Right.
They will be just concentrating on that one candidate, or maybe one or two candidates for a particular position. And it'd be a very big position, so the reward is huge. With an agency like ours, you have a database of 7,000 designers. You might have, 150 jobs at the same time. So the room, the time that you have to spend with each individual candidates, unfortunately, is limited. I mean, I think that we really tried our best to try and find a kind of a middle ground there. So we would spend time with each designer that we met, half an hour with them, everybody that we met, talking about them, talking about their portfolio. I always had time for people on the phone. So as much as you can, you will do that. But from a business point of view, that is really difficult because you have to weigh up time versus returns.
Absolutely.
Which sounds dreadful, doesn't it, when you're dealing with people?
Yeah,
but
it
that's
is
the reality of it, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting. And it clarifies that, at least for me. So I think that's other people would be interested in hearing
tough.
that.
I'm sure, it's harsh, but unfortunately, it's true.
Okay, so finally, to end on a hypothetical note, given an opportunity to rewind to when you opened Smith & Pye, a recruitment agency, would you do anything differently, taking into consideration how things have changed and the landscape, the recruitment landscape that we have now, particularly for the creative industries? Would you have done anything differently, do you think?
No.
No?
I wouldn't.
That's great.
You might be surprised to hear that, because we did decide to close the business, but no, I wouldn't. I think, we were very lucky. We were right place, right time, and we, as I said, we fell into it. So we learnt on the job completely. Neither of us had a huge amount of experience, but we were really passionate about what we wanted to do. We saw a gap and we went for it. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, actually, just learning on the job. And I think also, that thing of making mistakes as you go along, I think people tend to like you more for it. Right, I think a lot of the people that became friends and became very loyal to the business, maybe if we'd been a bit more kind of savvy and, come at it from a different perspective, then we wouldn't have had that loyal following that we had. And the internet and LinkedIn and the social networking sites like that, I think that's absolutely fine. Like I say, I think they're useful tools. I think it just depends who's using them. That they have to be in the right hands. So I'm not anti that at all. And I think as I was saying earlier, I'm all for handing over the baton now to somebody else. We had fantastic careers, loved it, loved every minute of it, had a blast, did lots of laughing. So no, nothing I would change at all actually.
Yeah. Well, I'd just like to pick up on that. When you talk about learning on the job and how actually that can make a difference.
Yeah.
I think your agency was the one agency that felt like it had a personality outside of the job of recruitment.
Yeah.
Even little gestures like sending out digital Christmas cards every Christmas.
That's lovely.
Was
you
something
remember
that it reaffirmed that, and so yeah, I totally agree that maybe you having a less calculated method, which was more, maybe you left more to sort of, your growth to a more organic experience, and also you felt very current, very fresh and new. There were other agencies that I came into contact with that were very well respected, but they didn't seem to have the personality of Smith and Pye.
Oh, that's really nice to know.
Yeah, I think that was really important, and it seems to me now that there's maybe a gap.
Yeah.
For that to continue in a slightly different landscape, albeit. But I do think that, I don't know if you agree with that.
I do agree. I mean, I think to a certain extent, I think we were quite unusual, Alice and I. I think that we weren't really recruiters actually. I mean, I know we were good at what we did.
Yeah.
We had a very successful business for many years, but we weren't really your classic recruiters.
Right.
We weren't sales driven. We were, really, as I said, really passionate about what we did. We were really passionate about nurturing talent. We loved what we did. We loved people, but also our interests were much broader always than either just recruitment or just fashion. So, when we used to meet people, it was great to be able to share interests like art and design and, all those other things and books and, things that part of the reason Alice and I got on so brilliantly, was that we shared a lot of those interests, and they were really fundamental to the setting up of the business and what made the business successful. So it was definitely not always just about recruitment and getting people that job. It was much broader, and I think that made us. I know that made us unusual. I don't think there were many other agencies out there like it. I think there were people who were specialists in fashion, and there were people who were very salesy recruitment agencies, but there weren't many who pulled in those other sort of areas of interest.
Yeah. Well, can I say then that I firmly believe that was appreciated. I sense that. That's maybe what I'm talking about when I refer to a personality.
Yeah.
But I felt that it was quite a personal relationship that I established with you over the years, even if I didn't see you for years.
Yeah.
But a conversation on the telephone, which would pick up from the last time we spoke, maybe, and just the fact that you felt that your work was appreciated and understood, and that you weren't just part of a kind of mechanism to place you somewhere for employment purposes. So I do think that you did make your mark, and the challenge is now for someone else to
it absolutely is.
Yeah, to achieve what you did over 22 years, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Right.
yes, good luck.
Yeah, good luck to anyone who wants to take up that baton. But thanks very much,
Thank you.
Cressida, for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, Colin. Thank you.